Okay, so dear colleagues and friends, with 158 Nobel laureates, I have signed the address supporting Ukraine in the war which has been imposed on it by Russia. I was born at the end of the Second World War. My mother's family had immigrated in the 1920s in France. My grandmother was born in Kishinev and my mother in Odessa. And so I know how many hardships and how much suffering has been imposed on you during the last century. The people of this part of Europe have been suffering a lot from the war and from other circumstances. And I follow every day with a broken heart the news about the war which takes place in your neighborhood. I would never have believed that during my lifetime I would see such atrocities coming back again in this part of the world. Of course, as human beings, we are all, of course, devastated by the deaths, the injuries, the crimes, the rapes and destructions which are perpetrated by Putin and his invasion army. And we are appalled by his blatant attack on democratic liberties and by the evil determination to destroy by all means, including terror, the will of the Ukrainian people to live freely in its country. And we are also admirative, of course, of the extraordinary resistance of Ukraine, and we hope that it will, in the end, prevail with the help of the other free nations of the world. But I don't want to speak only as a human being. I want also to convey my distress as a scientist. As scientists, we feel also that all the values for which we stand and which are at the heart of our civilization are being violated in this war. The French Renaissance writer François Rabelais has said a famous sentence, I will say it first in French: "Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme." Science without conscience is a ruin of the soul. You can give many interpretations, many meanings to that wise sentence, which is known by all French pupils. But one is that, of course, the acquisition of knowledge, which is the ultimate goal of science, cannot be achieved without the respect of moral values and intellectual integrity. And what we see now is the propagation of lies and fake news and the denial of reality which accompanies this war are at the opposite of the values of truth that science pursues. Science cannot thrive without communication and free exchange of ideas between people from different backgrounds and different countries. But these exchanges cannot take place during a war. They cannot take place while hatred is being stirred up. All scientists from your part of Europe, from Russia, Ukraine, and Moldavia, are thus impacted by this war on whatever side they are. In the west of Europe, in France in particular, we see among the refugees many researchers from Ukraine, of course, but also from Russia, which are fleeing a country which imposes an unjust war on its neighbors and which suppresses the freedom of its own citizens. From a wider perspective, the situation is also tragic because it distracts us from the urgent need to address the questions of climate change and environmental protection, which are a threat to our civilization. Science should be today fully mobilized to search for novel sources of renewable energies, to find solutions to mitigate the effects of the rise of temperature and to help prevent future health and famine crises. And the war in Europe is not only distracting us from solving these problems, but it also exacerbates these problems. In order, for instance, in order to compensate for the decrease of gas supply from Russia, Western countries return to exploiting coal and gas from their own underground, reversing the limited steps they had taken to reduce their production of carbon fuels. So this is something which goes against what should be done. And the massive loss of wheat and corn supply from Ukraine and Russia, and also the suppress of the trade in the Black Sea, will cause food shortages in Africa and the Middle East, aggravating the effect of the climate change, which is already induced by the drought that these countries experience today. So more and more pressure is put on science at a time when it is weakened by the consequences of the war. Scientific research, as we all know, is a long-term enterprise. It needs a strong collaboration between curiosity-motivated basic science and goal-oriented applied research. It needs, of course, funding to be carried on, and it relies on the trust of citizens who must support its scientists and understand their work. The war and the economical hardships it will induce will unfortunately decrease the funds for science and education at a time when we need it most. Let us hope that our political leaders will understand that keeping science going on, encouraging young, bright minds to get into science, raising the level of education of all our people are crucial if we want to save our civilization from the evils it is facing, if we want to have citizens which will be able to resist to fake news and to propaganda, which is not based on fact, but based on the will to decrease the trust that the people might have in the institutions. For that, we need, of course, a collective effort. We need solidarity in Europe and a deep feeling of urgency from all our leaders. In this context, I hope that Ukraine and Moldavia will be able to join soon the European community of nations to which they belong, and that Europe will help them to participate in our common effort to keep this planet livable and, more importantly, worth living in peace and freedom. Thank you for your attention.